New footage obtained by CNN has exposed how incomplete the Pentagon's first account of the USS Gerald Ford fire really was. The video shows the damage from a disastrous blaze aboard the largest and newest aircraft carrier in the United States Navy, and it puts images to a level of destruction that went well beyond the Navy's initial public statement. This reporting rests on the footage and the sailors who spoke to reporters, so the interpretation of what caused the blaze is still contested. But the images themselves are not in dispute. They show entire internal sections charred, twisted, and torn apart by the fire, and they expose the gap between the Navy's sparse first statement and the severity later described by sailors and officials. What the video shows is brutal. The damage left roughly 600 sailors without their normal sleeping spaces, with berthing compartments reduced to twisted metal. The ceiling looked hollowed out, with ash covering everything. One sailor described the ordeal in stark terms, saying it was fight or die as the crew battled to save the ship. That single phrase tells you how far this was from the Navy's initial framing. The first official statement mentioned 2 non-life-threatening injuries, but later reporting revealed that nearly 200 sailors needed treatment for smoke exposure, and 1 was evacuated. The footage helps explain why at least 1 sailor fighting the blaze believed the crew could lose the ship. The scale of the destruction is staggering. Around 600 people lost their sleeping quarters in the blaze. The compartments where hundreds of sailors slept were turned into warped, blackened steel. To put that in perspective, this is not a small electrical fire in a corner of a massive ship. This is the gutting of entire living sections of a carrier that cost billions of dollars to build. And it raises an obvious question about how a fire that began in one part of the ship spread far enough to devastate that much of the crew's living space. The fight to control the blaze was enormous. The crew of nearly 4,500 sailors took 30 hours to put the fire out. That is more than a full day and night of continuous firefighting aboard a nuclear-powered warship. One sailor put it plainly, "I thought we would lose the ship." A 30-hour battle is not the signature of a small, quickly contained accident. It is the signature of a major shipboard emergency that threatened critical sections of one of the most expensive military assets ever built, and the length of that fight alone undercuts the idea that this was a minor, well-managed incident. Here is the detail that turns this from an accident into a scandal. Sources say the ship's fire suppression system failed to activate. On the newest and most expensive carrier in the American fleet, the automatic system designed to stop exactly this kind of disaster did not respond as intended. That reported failure may help explain why sailors were forced into a 30-hour battle to contain the blaze, fighting it by hand while investigators examine why the safeguards did not work. On a warship of this class, a suppression system that does not activate is its own serious problem, regardless of what started the fire. The consequences went far beyond the fire itself. The blaze affected the carrier's operations and forced the ship to divert to Greece. With the loss of roughly 600 sailors' sleeping spaces, the Ford was left unable to house a significant part of its own crew. Sailors reportedly ended up sleeping on the floor and on tables and breathing smoke-contaminated air. A carrier deployed as a symbol of overwhelming American power had to leave the immediate fight and enter port for assessment and repairs. For a vessel meant to project dominance across an entire region, that is a deeply humiliating turn. And the fire was not the only problem on this deployment. According to reporting, the ship's toilets repeatedly clogged during the extended deployment. Onboard video shows human waste filling multiple toilets. One sailor said that if you were in the forward section of the ship, you often had to walk all the way to the back just to find a working bathroom. On the most expensive warship ever built, the basic sanitation system was failing. It is a small detail next to the fire, but it paints a larger picture of a flagship plagued by serious, embarrassing problems that the Navy was not eager to publicize. So what does the Pentagon say caused all this? The official explanation, according to reporting, points to a fire that began in a laundry area, with some accounts suggesting it started from lint. Asked about the fire and the failure of the suppression system, a Navy spokesperson said only that the investigation is ongoing. That is the entire official account. A laundry fire, 2 minor injuries, an ongoing investigation, and a ship that the Navy insists remains fully operational with its nuclear propulsion working normally. The problem is that this explanation sits very awkwardly next to the images that have now been published. This is where the questions multiply. What reportedly began in the laundry area spread far enough to devastate nearby berthing spaces, raising serious questions about containment. The reported damage reaches the crew's living quarters and the area tied to the fire suppression system. None of this proves anything beyond what the reporting documented, but it is fair to say the official narrative, a laundry fire that spread far enough to displace hundreds of sailors and burned for 30 hours after the suppression system failed to activate, leaves a lot of room for doubt about how the situation was allowed to get so far out of hand. Into that doubt step claims from Iran. Around the time of the March incident, Iranian media later amplified claims that the carrier had come under attack. But no public evidence has connected the fire to an Iranian strike, and the United States maintains the damage was caused by an internal fire. So this remains an unproven claim set against the official explanation. The timing of those claims, circulating in the same window as the fire, is part of why the laundry fire account has drawn skepticism, both inside Iran and beyond. It is a reason for questions, not a substitute for evidence. The crew's safety is where the numbers shifted. The Navy's first statement mentioned 2 injured sailors, but later reporting showed that nearly 200 others received treatment for smoke-related effects, and 1 was evacuated. That is a very different picture from the initial account, and it is a reminder of how much the official version grew over time. The footage shows the destruction of compartments where hundreds slept, and the fact that the casualty figures kept rising after the first statement is exactly the kind of thing that fuels public distrust, even without evidence of anything being deliberately hidden. The repair effort tells its own story. The Pentagon has reportedly signed a repair contract worth $17.5 million, with work expected to continue into 2027. The carrier entered port for repairs and assessment after the fire disrupted berthing and placed additional strain on its operations. The new repair contract shows that the consequences did not end when the flames were extinguished, even if the Navy continued to describe the ship as mission-capable. You do not commit that kind of money and that kind of timeline to a vessel that suffered nothing more than a minor laundry fire. The scale of the repair quietly sits in tension with the modest scale of the original account. And this is where it stops being a technical problem and becomes a question of trust. If the Navy's first statement understated the severity of this fire, the natural question is what else has been understated. The first official statement was overtaken by later reporting that revealed a 30-hour firefighting effort, widespread smoke exposure, and hundreds of displaced sailors. The footage finally showed what those numbers looked like. When the gap between the first public story and the documented reality is this wide, it chips away at the credibility of other official claims about this conflict. That is the real fallout here, larger than any single fire. So this is the picture. The new footage shows that the USS Gerald Ford fire was far more severe than the Navy's first statement suggested, with roughly 600 sailors displaced, a 30-hour battle, a suppression system that failed to activate, and a carrier forced to divert to Greece. The official explanation is a laundry area fire, with an investigation still ongoing. Iranian media amplified claims of an attack, but no public evidence connects the fire to an Iranian strike. The footage did not reveal the entire story for the first time, but it gave the public its clearest look yet at how severe the damage really was. Whatever caused it, the Pentagon's original account looks far less complete after the public finally saw the damage. Subscribe to WLA for daily geopolitical analysis.